with Senator Mike Lee. I'm just sitting here looking, and I kind of alluded to it, but, with the government shutdown and everything, your eyes don't look too blackened, but you took a little bit of a beating there.
Sure.
What are your thoughts in retrospect at looking at that standoff with the Senate, the legislature, and the president?
Well, I still think it's unfortunate that the president chose, rather deliberately, to shut down the government rather than to compromise, rather than to negotiate in good faith. He didn't do that. On July 2nd, he unconstitutionally revised, rewrote, amended Obamacare. He has no power to do that constitutionally or statutorily. He said he was doing it because the law wasn't ready to be implemented. And so I pointed out, look, especially if the president says it's not ready to be implemented, and especially if the president's going to try to usurp the constitutional powers that don't belong to him, we shouldn't be funding it. And perhaps more to the point, I wanted Obamacare to be funded or not funded on its own merits and not on the merits of defense spending, cancer research, national parks management, or anything else in government. Obamacare ought to be able to stand on its own merits if it's going to be funded. Unfortunately, the president refused to negotiate with us, refused to allow us to fund anything in government unless we were willing to fund everything in government, including Obamacare. That was not good faith negotiation. That was not compromise. And it was shameful what he did. It was also shameful, I think, that most of the mainstream media refused to report the true facts of what actually happened, as I've described it. The more important part of all of this is what we do moving forward from the government shutdown. And I've chosen to focus on the need for a conservative reform agenda. The battle that we had within the Republican Party during and leading up to the shutdown focused on a gulf that has come to exist in the Republican Party between the establishment and the sort of newer, more grassroots-propelled conservatives. And I think that gap, that hole in the Republican Party is exactly the size and shape of a conservative reform agenda. I think we need to focus on not just what we're against in government. That part's also necessary. But we also need to focus on what we're for. We need to focus on legislative solutions that will enhance the security and the economic mobility of the American people, particularly those who are struggling in the middle class and those who are trying to work their way out of the bottom end of the economic spectrum. And so I think that conservative principles properly understood will give us these things that we're really for, ways that we can reform the tax code so that it's more friendly to hardworking American families and parents, things that will make higher education more affordable, and things that will make us freer and more able to enjoy the prosperity that this country has to offer.
Senator Lee, you were all about raising the interest rates on student loans. How does that make education more affordable?
Well, what I'm talking about is something that focuses not on entrenching the federal government's monopoly of the student loan industry. I think that's the wrong solution, and I continue to hold to that. What I'm saying will actually help to control the escalation of tuition in the higher education context is if we open up the accreditation process which ultimately is managed in one way or another by the federal government. If we make federal accreditation of higher education learning institutions, those that are eligible for participation in federal student loan programs, we will make higher education more available and more affordable to more people, especially those who need it.
So you basically, higher education needs a more competitive marketplace?
It does. And I think we're stuck in an old model. That's not to say that the colleges and universities of today don't do great work. They do. It's just that we've got other enterprises, online learning institutions, vocational training programs, and so forth, that are equally worthy of our federal student loan programs, and those ought to have the opportunity to participate as well.
Okay, a very short answer to this last question. You basically alluded to the fact that that conservative agenda is going to require that we focus on what we can do instead of what we're against. Do you think both sides, from the Tea Party side and from the establishment side, can look past those and make a solution that will create that agenda?
I think we can, and I want to be clear. I'm not saying that we can forget for a moment what we're against. Both aspects of this are absolutely necessary. We've got to remain opposed to those things that we oppose, but we've also got to be for something. And I think the things that we're for are things that will help us unite as a party and move forward and come out of the 2014 election cycle stronger than ever.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time on the county seat. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
We look for you to keep tuning in because, remember, local government